what does this do to the big, beautiful bill? And the reason I ask it is because the big, beautiful bill has a provision in it, or several provisions in it, to begin a $200 assessment annually on all electric cars. So if you have an electric car and this thing is passed into law in the form that it's in right now, you would have to pay at income tax time $200 every year for the great privilege of owning an electric car, with the idea being that the $200 would go to help support the gas station owners that you're putting out of business. That's insane, but that's the idea. There is also a $100 annual fee. They don't want to call it a tax, but a fee on people who own hybrids for the same reason, because you're taking food out of the mouths of children whose parents own gas stations. And so, you know, as the Italians like to say, what, I shouldn't eat too?
It is an insane provision. I mean, look, broadly speaking, I think it's questionable whether the big, beautiful bill is going to get through the Senate in its present form.
I wanted to ask you that. I wanted to ask you that for a couple of reasons. Number one, the Senate is much tougher than the House normally because the Senate, you know, people are more independent thinkers, and they're not all up for re-election every 2 years. Okay, they're staggered, so it's every 6 years. That's number one. Number two, the bill only passed the House by one single vote. One single vote. So, in the
several of those votes would now be reversed.
That's right.
Because they're people like Marjorie Taylor Greene feel that they were conned.
That's right. So, in the Senate, there are senators, Republican senators, who want individual provisions taken out or put in. Whatever happens on the Senate side, this bill has to go back to conference committee where it's reconciled, because the House bill and the Senate bill are going to be slightly different. And so they hammer out the differences.
Or maybe really different this time.
And it could be really different this time, depending on who has a bigger voice in conference committee. Then it goes back to both houses for passage. But if you only passed it in the House by a margin of one, and let's say you pass it in the Senate with a margin that looks like 2 or 3,
if you're lucky.
Is that enough to make this thing law? I'm thinking it's not. And then what do we do? Then there's no budget. Yeah. And we haven't even talked about
Donald Trump possibly goes into the midterms next year. The Republicans go to the midterms without a significant legislative achievement to point to.
Not a single one.
I think that's something to consider too. The political fallout. I mean, it seems like we're now in an era where presidents only get to have one big bill. Yeah. Like Biden had the infrastructure bill, and that was it. Yeah. And that Obama only got the Affordable Care Act, and that was it. It's not to say that they didn't get anything else done, but not much else. And so, I mean, that would be a big handicap. I mean, Trump knew he had to move quickly. That's why he wanted to do this one thing. I get it. I get the thinking. I don't know. I mean, I'd have to say I give this thing a 40-60 chance. It's not like it's dead, but the odds are a bit. It's facing some headwinds, right? I mean, it's like a salmon trying to get it back upstream, and there's some new dams that have been installed along the way. It's going to be, and you know, just parenthetically about the anti-clean fuel subsidies that you're talking, the anti-subsidies that you're talking about. It's such a reversal, right? I mean, back 20 years ago, I bought a hybrid here in New York.
I did too.
It was like it was great. There was a tax break, a federal tax break. I think it was $4,000, and then you could park at any city or municipal parking lot in the city of New York. Not that there are very many of them, but for free. And best of all, you got a sticker on your car that entitled you to drive alone in the high occupancy vehicle lanes, which, living on Long Island during rush hour, which is like a parking lot, was a godsend. You know, it turned a 5-hour commute into a 2.5-hour commute, and all those things are, you know, just I mean, I don't really care that much about, electric vehicles politically, but I do, but they are clearly the future. And how does it make us look? I mean, this is a country like we can't do big things anymore. We can't build high-speed rail. We can't do socialized medicine. We can't solve big problems, and we can't make college affordable, on and on and on. Part of why Trump came into office, he won twice, is because people were sick of that. And this plays into that narrative, in my opinion.
Wow. I can't even add anything to that. I can't make it better. I agree completely. That was the appeal of Donald Trump. He was the one who potentially could really shake things up. And now it's like his hands are tied. Eric makes a comment, we always have money for war. Oh boy, do we have money for war. More
Endless
money than the
amount.
Pentagon even asks for. Every single year, Congress appropriates more money than the Pentagon asks them for. And that's inexcusable. I was driving today to meet a friend for breakfast, and going up, a normal road here in Arlington, Virginia. It was like Bosnia during the war, trying to get through this road. But we have plenty of money for missiles and to send to Israel and subsidize their settler housing and all this other stuff. But we can't pave the friggin' road in Arlington, Virginia. It doesn't make any kind of sense. I'm very disappointed. But anyway, getting back to this issue of the passage of the big beautiful bill, I watched an interview day before yesterday with Lisa Murkowski, a second interview, and it was funny. She was walking while she was giving the interview, and she was saying, "Well, it would be great if we could pass this for the budget and blah blah blah." But then she hit on something that has not been at the top of the list of talking points from the administration. The president is asking that the debt ceiling limit be lifted.
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is, of course it should be lifted. The thing is, it's become this hot potato that's exchanged between the two parties. Whoever happens to be in the White House wants a raise in the debt limit. Whoever happens to be in the opposition party in Congress, they don't want to raise the debt limit or debt ceiling. And that's how you squeeze the other side to get something that you want. But it inhibits a president from his ability to lead, plain and simple. And so it doesn't matter who happens to be in the White House. There should not be a debt ceiling.
I agree, John. Look, I mean, the thing is, I looked into this to see if other countries do this. They don't. It makes no sense whatsoever. No. I mean, basically, it's like in all other countries, whatever if the revenues of the federal government are larger than the expenses,
yes,
then there's a budget surplus, and if not, then there's a deficit, and that's it. And you don't have to. The government doesn't have a credit rating because it's its own financial issuer. It just makes debt as needed. It issues debts, sells debts. So it's this fiction, that we keep hearing. Like Elon Musk is saying this right now. Oh, the government needs to live within its means.
Yeah.
Well, clearly that's not true.
Right.
The government hasn't lived within its means for well over
decades,
100 years. And it's just not really necessary. And it's just sort of, like you said, it's just this artificial constraint that comes out of this fiction that, it's kind of like a family budget. Everyone has to come in the black, which, by the way, isn't true about family budgets, right? Because people take out home mortgages, they have credit cards, they take out car loans. Like, Americans don't live within their means as families either.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. And because government has the ability to print money, it doesn't really need to live within its means, because so long as it can balance the need to spend with the need to keep inflation in check, then, it can do whatever it wants. I remember, you and I talked about this once before. I remember when it was one year when Bill Clinton was president, and there was an article in the Post, just this little tiny article in the Post saying Congress passed a budget. Like, how did everybody miss this? Congress passed a budget yesterday, and it's the earliest in the legislative year that Congress has passed a budget in more than 100 years. Like, how did that happen? Well, it's because they were doing their jobs. They were doing what they were paid to do. You're paid, like, one of the very few things that Congress is mandated to do is to pass a budget, to appropriate and authorize money for the working of the federal government. And they actually did it on time, and it took the whole country by surprise. Ridiculous.
Right. Well, I mean, you do have to give Clinton credit for that. That's also in part because he rolled over to the Republicans.
Yes, he did,
and gave them everything they wanted. So
that's right.
They were like, okay. They didn't have anything to disagree about. They kind of violated a lot of the rules of Keynesian economics, right? Which is, during the, run a deficit, like save money during a, run a surplus, save the money during your during the big boom times, which Bill Clinton had, and then that money will be available to George W. Bush, who will then blow it all to invade Afghanistan and Iraq, which is
right. That's what happened.
Totally what happened.
That's exactly it.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's the dysfunction is very dispiriting, right? I mean, we might not, as American families, have to live within our means, but, we're not allowed to be that dysfunctional, or we end up out on the street. We'll be fired for sure.